you see one in the sky, if you see one manifest before your very eyes, if you see a strange creature lurking outside, then tell it on accounts of the paranormal. Hear it on accounts of the paranormal. Welcome to accounts of the paranormal.
Welcome to the show. Tonight, I speak with Bryan, who comes to us from Texas, sharing the unsettling paranormal activity he and his wife experienced after moving into their first home. The activity ranged from poltergeist to disembodied voices to the ghosts of a little boy and girl that their 3-year-old daughter interacted with. Bryan, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Gino. Glad to be here.
I'm happy to have you here. Thanks so much for coming on. When I received your email, I was super excited to speak with you. You're very detailed about the things you've experienced in this previous home of yours, and I'm really eager to get to all that activity. One of the items that you had mentioned in particular really stood out to me because it's actually something that I had experienced years ago, so I'm really excited to hear about that as well. So I'm excited to get into it, and what I like to do is just kind of go back to before you and your wife had moved into this home and you started experiencing this activity. Had you any experiences prior to do with the paranormal at any level? What was it like before you moved into this home for you?
Somewhat. When I was younger, they called them night terrors, but I would wake up with things in my face, and it would startle me. And then there were a few other instances of voices around the house and things like that, but nothing like we encountered when we moved into that house on Samuels.
And the night terrors, at what age were you when those were occurring?
Probably between 8 and 12.
Yeah, so you were a young boy then, and then it kind of just faded out?
Yeah, just kind of, I looked back and it was gone one day. Kind of odd, really, because it wasn't something I thought about all the time, but at one point I remember thinking about it and going, it stopped. So, not sure exactly what changed or if it was just me. I kind of feel like younger kids have a little higher connection than adults do. And maybe that's what the thing about that was.
And what were the night terrors like? Do you recall? What were you experiencing, if you can remember?
Mainly just waking up in a sweat, kind of paralyzed, only for a split second. But when I would open my eyes, there would be something in my face, and like it would have, it had colors, kind of outlining it, but it was only for a split second, and then it was gone, just long enough to startle me, and scare me. But I was already sweating, and like I said, the paralysis, for that split second, I couldn't move. But that's really about it. I think as far as anything that was pretty paranormal. I know my family on my mother's side had a lot of like things. My grandmother would say, "Hey, so and so is going to die next week," and you're like, "What do you mean? They're perfectly healthy. She's going to pass." And this happened several times, and sure enough, they would pass. But I don't know that it has a whole lot to do with the house on Samuels. I think that was there when we moved in.
And let's get into that. Talk about when you moved into this home and how soon did any activity start?
Oh, it started almost immediately. When we moved boxes into the house, we separated all the rooms boxes. And in fact, we went to the stockyards to eat and came back home, and the boxes were moved. Not just like unstacked, but boxes for the bathroom were in the living room, and boxes for the living room were in the bedroom. And at first we kind of thought we were just nuts. And then it just kind of progressed from there. We would get things unpacked. I was hooking up electronics and things like that, and we were in one room and the stereo came on. I thought, wow, that's kind of weird. Maybe something bumped the remote or something. The remote was still box. So that was kind of the first experiences, is the stereo turning on, the boxes being moved. And about 2 weeks after we moved in, I started having dreams of, there was a little hallway, 4 rooms went into it. The bathroom off to one side, washroom, and then bedroom and kitchen. So there were 4 doorways into this small little square hallway. But it was a couple of weeks after we moved in, I started having dreams of me being in that hallway staring up into a black abyss. And my thoughts, once things started happening, was, this is a portal. This is not normal. The dream was recurring. Same dream. I'm just in the hallway staring up into the abyss. A lot of activity in that bathroom, in that back bedroom, and in the kitchen right off of that hallway. So I kind of feel like that might have been where things were coming through.
That's interesting you mentioned that. A recent guest I had kind of described the same thing in their home, believing that there was some type of portal because there's so much activity, kind of like with this house that you and your wife were in at that time. So this all started kind of right out the gate as soon as you moved in. What did you make of it? What did you think was going on? Did you think someone was messing with you, or did you consider paranormal? What were your thoughts initially?
We went straight to paranormal right off the bat. There were things that going on that just couldn't be explained. Like we would leave and come back and all the lights in the house would be on, and we know we turned them off. TVs would be on full blast, as loud as they would go. You could hear them when you pulled up to the house. Things that we know that were off. I went directly to paranormal because you mentioned earlier what we felt when we moved into the home. You could feel you were not alone. The house had a presence. It wasn't really distinctly one thing or another. It was the house. Like the room full of people, and I mean, it was so loud that you could almost make out words, but they were talking over each other just enough you couldn't make it out. But like I said, when you get up, you touch the doorknob, it's gone. There's no other explanation.
Oh, yeah. And you and I were chatting about that, and that is such an interesting thing because I had experienced, like I had mentioned to you, hearing voices, lots of people in my particular case, and then, you get up, go open the door, and everything just goes blank. It's nuts. And, you know what you heard. You know that there was sounds, people talking, like you said. In my experience, it sounded to me like there was probably 7, 8, 9, 10 people, downstairs, like eating, drinking. I could hear the clanking of the silverware, and then just sound like there was a dinner party going on just to open the door, and then everything it's like someone flipped a switch. Absolutely just incredible. And it was so cool to hear someone else personally who experienced the same thing. So do you know the history of the house? Like when you moved in, about how old was it? And can you describe, this is like North Texas. Can you describe the area and any of the history of the home?
Yeah, this is the historic North Downtown District of Fort Worth. The house sat about a half a mile from where the original Fort Worth stood. The cemetery that was next door, Pioneers Rest Cemetery, was the first established cemetery in Fort Worth in 1850. So a lot of history there. Like I said, General Tarrant was buried there. Ripley Arnold was buried there. Unknown soldiers. A lot of unmarked graves. And as I mentioned, there was actually some where plague victims were put into pits and just covered with stone. And it's a historic area. The homes are all very historic, Victorian homes. Our home was a small 2-bedroom home. It sat on the corner just adjacent to the cemetery. It was just a small little good area. It was a good area. I think it was rough back years ago, but it was a good area. Quiet, but that cemetery even when we walked by that cemetery, you could just feel like somebody's watching. It was just the eeriest feeling ever. And we used to go walk through there all the time because the history and looking at the headstones and things like that were just amazing. Lots of children. I did notice that there were a lot of children that died before they were 12. Not sure if it was plague or TB or what went on, but a lot of battles went on there at the original fort site. So it's hard to tell.
Yeah, speaking of children, let's talk about your daughter and what she experienced when she was around 3 years old. Just go back and start when you first were made aware of what was happening to her, what she was seeing.
Well, we noticed her having a little tea party. She had her little table, and she would set up her chairs and her little teacups, and she started talking to other kids that were not there. I mean, just conversations like, me and the wife are doing our thing and we're listening, and she's talking and somebody's talking back to her. So we just watched for a week or two, and then we finally sat her down and talked to her and said, "Hey, who are these kids you're playing with?" And oh, Daddy, is what she said. She said the little girl got sick and went to sleep, and when she woke up, her mommy and everybody was gone, and she's been looking for them. And the little boy, she told us, was fishing with his dad, which the Trinity River was right across the street from the house. He was fishing with his dad and fell in the water, and when he came up, nobody was there, and he was searching for his dad. This went on for till we moved, 3 or 4 years. It went on. She played with him almost every day. She argued with him. I guess they wanted to do things that she didn't want to do, and she would be in her room and we'd be in the other room, and she would yell, be angry, yelling at the ghost kid. And we never got a name. I tried to get a name. I was going to go to the library, pull up the old microfiche, see if I could find anything on these kids, but never did.
Did your daughter have names for them?
No, I don't think she did. I was looking through my notes to see if she ever gave us a name. That was so long ago. That's what I was doing when I rang into you. I meant to do it earlier. Let me pop into my notes here.
When you first recognized her, children, they have imaginary friends and they even talk to them and play with them. When you first recognized this with your daughter, describe that. Like, how apparent was it, the conversations she was having, and what were your thoughts initially when she first told you this?
I thought it was just an imaginary friend for the first few days. I thought it was just we had moved. Lots of things going on. Thought maybe she got an imaginary friend to cope with everything going on, the big moves and all that stuff. And but then I realized that she's looking at them. What I would see is eye to eye. And she's asking them things like, oh, would you like some tea? And then she would just, okay, and pour like she was pouring tea. You want sugar? And oh, sure, I have a snack. She just talked to them like they were two normal kids actually there. It was wild to us, but still, even then, me and the wife we didn't feel fearful. We didn't feel like anything was malevolent there. Trickster, yes. Malevolent, no. But outside, our dog could see them. Because when she would walk out of the room from playing with these kids, the dog was watching the ghost kids. He would back up and he wasn't looking at Amanda. He was looking at the ghost kids. And you could tell, and he would shake. He would tremble. He didn't like it. That was the other thing that kind of let us know that, hey, these are visitors. This is real. we just talked to our daughter about it, and told her, hey, if you ever need to talk about anything about any of this, because in my mind, I don't know what these ghost kids are influencing or anything like that, So we just tried to keep communication open with her, and uh, she just seemed to be really in tune with paranormal.
So initially, you'd thought, like probably most parents would, that just imaginary friends. At what point was there any particular event you witnessed with her, with them, where you were like, okay, this is something more? This is something different. When did it go from their imaginary friends to she's talking and playing with ghosts?
It was just a few days, maybe a week. It didn't take long for us to realize that she was actually playing with someone, that she was talking to someone was actually there. That me and the wife talked about it, and we came to the same conclusion that there's no way she's having this intelligible conversation with an imaginary friend. Somebody was talking back. The pause times.
The back and forth just seemed a little too real.
Yeah, it was fluid. She would wait for responses, acknowledge responses. And that's when we realized this is real. And with everything else we had encountered in the house, it wasn't that far-fetched. But when things like this happen, the first thing your mind does is try to rationalize it with something other than paranormal. That's the first. I think that's the first thing a lot of people's minds go to, is what really happened, because it can't be paranormal. But we knew it was.
This went on for about 3-4 years, you said. When and how did this stop?
We moved. They came through. They came through the area, and they were doing the. They were going to put in a river walk going from north downtown into the stockyards like San Antonio has. So they came through and they bought up all the properties. But my mother at the time was diagnosed with cancer. So we sold the house in North Fort Worth and moved to Newark, Texas. And that's kind of when it all stopped, because I don't know if it was the boy my daughter was playing with, or another boy apparently attached and came with us. We saw him frequently, like full body, saw him. The first time we saw him run through the hallway, and my wife said, "Who is that?" And I was like, "I don't know." I saw it too. We both jumped up and ran in, because it went into my daughter's room, and we went in there. It was just my daughter, but it was a very plain to see blonde-headed boy, wearing what looked like a long, maybe nightgown or long shirt or something like that.
Okay, so you guys moved. How soon did you start seeing this boy that you're describing? And did your daughter ever claim to see him, or did she say, "Oh, that's the boy from the other house"?
No. We asked her about it, and she did not see the boy there. But we saw him multiple times in the front yard, running through our hallway. It started about a month after we moved. Once we kind of got all settled, everything into the house, is when we started seeing the boy.
And he was as clear as can be. It looked like you were just seeing a boy. That's how clear this was.
Absolutely clear. Never saw his face. He was always either turned or going away from us. Never saw a face, but just looked like a blonde-haired boy. Like I said, wearing a gown. We saw him run across the front yard. We saw him run through the house. Things like that. Even when my son was born, and he was about the age of the boy that was running through the house, it was still going on. This was years later. And we saw the little boy and thought it was our son, and we would get up to go check, and our boy would be dead asleep, and there would be nothing there. I don't know if it attached to my daughter and came, if it attached to us, or an object that we brought. I did bring some of the some of the stone that we had turned over in the driveway was like a rose stone, a marble rose. And we did take some of it for a garden project. I thought maybe it was attached to some of that.
How close was this home to the previous one?
About 35 miles. It was in Newark, Texas, off 287 and in Wise County. So it was a fair ways away.
Yeah, and let's go back to the stones you're talking about. You had mentioned to me about when you did your driveway. Can you touch on that and what you found?
Yeah, it was a gravel drive, and we were gonna put in a cement drive. So we had someone come in, and we started turning over the driveway. And when we started turning over the driveway, we found headstones. But they were broken up real bad, nothing legible on them really. You could catch a number here or a letter there, but they were shattered up pretty good. And some of them you could tell were around the same age as some of the first stones that were in the cemetery, just by the coloring and everything. And if you walk through the cemetery and you look and we that's what we did. We walked through and we matched the colors of the stones to the headstones that were out there, and the stones were from about the beginning of the cemetery. So I kind of feel like that maybe that house was built on top of bodies. I wouldn't be surprised that whole corner was. I mean, I'm sure there were more people buried there than what's marked now.
Yeah, that is crazy. That is straight out of the Poltergeist, building a home on top of old graves.
My wife said we should keep digging down, and I just told her, there's some things we don't want to disturb. But she was really interested. She really wanted to know. She spent time at the library with me searching newspaper clippings, things like that. But we could sit in our living room and watch TV, and the TV would turn off and the water in the bathroom would come on. Weird things like that almost daily occurrences. The toilet would flush on its own. We got up one morning. It was actually our anniversary, and my wife was saying, "Hey, I'm going to get up and I'll make us breakfast and stuff." And I was like, "Okay." And when she walked out of the room, I just hear, "Oh my God!" So I kind of jumped up and ran in there, and all our dishes were out on the counter. The doors were open to the cabinets. The dishes were stacked perfectly on the counter, just like they were in the cabinet, just on the counter. And she swore that I got up in the middle of the night and did this at that time. And then after a few other things happened, like things moving in front of us, chairs. We had a chair there. There was a cold spot in our living room. It could be 100 degrees outside. This spot was always cold. But you could set a chair there and walk out of the room and come back, and it would be off that spot. I have video somewhere. I need to get those. But that never moved in front of us. But Halloween night, I had some family over, my cousin and his wife and another cousin, and we were talking about the house being haunted, and my cousin he has nothing for it. There's no such thing to him. And we're sitting in my living room, and everybody has their drink on the table, and he's talking about it. He's just telling us we're full of crap. There's no such thing as ghosts. And his glass moved from one end of the table all the way to the other, in front of every one of us. It just a smooth slide all the way to the other end of the table. And he said, "Hey, it's just condensation." And he picked it up and wiped his hand on the bottom. It was completely dry. He grabbed his wife and he said, "We're never coming back here again. We're leaving. Let's go." And they did. They left. They never came back. He called. He said he don't know how we live there with things like that going on. And I said, "Well, I guess it depends on what you fear."
Sounds like he became a believer that night.
He did. We were all really close. Like we spent a lot of time together and stuff like that. But he would not step foot back in that house after that night.
It sounded like there was a lot of poltergeist activity, things moving, and even hearing the voices coming from the other room. Did you ever or your wife ever see any apparitions, or was it strictly limited to what you've already kind of described?
Pretty much what I described. The smoke, I don't know what the deal was with that smoke. Once in a while, we could see, under the door, sitting in another room, you would see like a light, like a bright light for a few seconds, and then it would go away. We did have instances where we were touched, just standing in the kitchen or laying in bed. We had hands put on our shoulders. Felt like somebody poking us in the back. It felt more like somebody was picking at us, like somebody was playing. And then we actually watched the pillow on our bed indent. We had just gotten up. The wife made the bed every morning when we got up. We're standing there, we're talking about what we're doing that day, and we both look over at the same time, and it was almost like a hand pushed down on the pillow. And I knew what it was. The wife's like, there was probably some air in the pillow. And I'm like, no, that was just so blatant that somebody wanted us to know they were there.
I wonder if it was one of those kids.
When we heard the disembodied voices in the other room and things, it sounded like all men. Didn't really hear women's voices that I could make out. My wife couldn't either. She said it sounded like all men to her. And it did. It was really loud. Like it would drown out your hearing in the other room. But like you said, you get up, you touch the doorknob, and falls silent.
Oh, so it was pretty loud. That's interesting. From my experience, it wasn't like it was loud, but it was just obvious that something was happening downstairs. How often did you hear the voices from another room? How often did that occur?
Oh, probably, I don't know, maybe once a month. Something like it happened quite often. It's almost like they were partying without us in our own home.
And would you and your wife hear them at the same time? Like, would you guys hear it? Would you guys look at each other like, what is that?
No, it really it would kind of come up from a low grumble, and the voices would just start getting louder and louder, and we would hear it about the same time. Like I said, we would look at each other and be like, oh, what the heck? This is, again, and after a while of it happening over and over again, we stopped getting up and trying to open the door. We got complacent with it. To me, they were doing their thing, and they weren't hurting us. Like I said, I had that trickster feeling, like maybe one of them maybe was a trickster, like to let people know he's there. But with the boy and the girl being lost, it did make me wonder if maybe, if this is a lost souls portal, if these are people that like never made it to the other side. I talked to a lady. She was a psychic in Fort Worth. She was a gypsy woman, and she said that the spirit surrounded me. I don't know what she meant by it, but she said the spirit surrounded me, and she didn't. I had no fear. She felt no fear from me, and she thought that may be why they were being so open and coming out. I guess the way she was talking, I guess my mind was open to it, so it presented itself, and the wife as well.
Did you ever consider or think about maybe having someone come in to check out the activity? And
yeah, she reached out to a Penn State Paranormal team. I can't remember what the gentleman's name was. And they were going to come out, but it was like 8 months away, and we moved before any of that ever took place. But they used to have a show on called Paranormal State, and the guy that ran it was he had a lot of things happen to him when he was younger, and he was really trying to understand But she had reached out to them and was getting it all set up for somebody to come out. But we waited for years to try to do anything about it because it just didn't bother us that much. She would get upset because we would have to get up and turn water off. Or there were also times that we would go through a doorway and the door would slam behind us, and it would scare us. But nothing ever really tried to hurt us.
So the home's no longer there. Did I understand that right?
No, they tore it down, and it's just an empty lot now. Of course, the cemetery's still there. I kind of wonder because they did come in, they did do some ground turning and things like that. I know after they tore down the house, and I kind of wonder if they found what we found and stopped. Not really sure because my house and then the one that sat behind my house, and then the restaurant on the corner, they never did anything with. Everything else, townhomes now and all that stuff, they never did anything. But I wish we could have got some investigators in there, and I do have some recordings and things I need to get out, and now that's the other thing. We did try to record the voices in the other room, and when we recorded, we could hear it, but the recording did not pick it up. We thought for sure this is going to capture it, and nothing. We'd play the tape, absolutely nothing. And we tried everything. We would set the recorder and sit in the chair closest to the door where we could hit the recorder right there at the door, and it never did pick up anything.
About how long ago was this?
This was 1994, 1996, because we moved in 2001. Yeah, about 1996.
So you moved from the home into the other home. You began seeing that boy spirit in the other home. And did that just kind of fade off? There was never any activity like in the previous house, right?
No, we never had anything really go too wild there. Just the little boy, and now my aunt across the street from us, she has a doll room that's definitely haunted, but nothing at our house.
And your daughter, as she grew up, did she ever experience anything else? Have you had any other experiences since then? What has happened since all this, if anything?
Yeah, not really a whole lot. Sometimes I feel like something's with me, but my daughter, nothing else with her. Once she got older, it kind of died off, and my son, he never really, never had anything go on with him really, and things just quieted down after we moved. We saw the boy several times over the years, but like I said, we never could see a face. He was always turned away from us. Usually running, like running from one room to another, running across the front yard. But no, everything quieted down after that. Just the whole time we were at that house on Samuels, it continued almost daily. There was always something.
Yeah, it sounds like it was definitely about that house, that property, for sure.
Definitely. And something else we kind of noticed that when activity would get high, like when the chatting in the room and stuff like that, when you walked into the room, it was colder than the other rooms. But you would come out of there and go back in 30 minutes later, and it was absolutely fine. I tried to find more history on the house. I'm sure that house was built towards the end of the fort still standing. So I don't know who lived there. I don't know why it was built, anything like that. The house was kind of unique from all the other houses. It had a steep roof and tall ceilings, and most of the other houses in the area did not. But so I always wondered if that house had a special standing long ago, like maybe a hospital thing or a medical thing, or or maybe even a caretaker for the cemetery, or someone that does the burials and things, I'm not sure. But like I said, with the headstones in the driveway and everything that went on there, I'm almost positive there's probably bodies under that land, and that there was a portal in that house. We discussed burning sage. My wife talked about calling it in the church. But I'm kind of weird about stuff like that. If they're not bothering me, I'm not going to bother them. uh, that's the way I feel about it, you know. And but she did want Penn State to come in and do their investigation. I would have loved for that to have been able to take place. It just didn't work out that way for us.
That would have been really, really neat to have that documented for sure.
Well, I'll tell you also so this is really weird as well. Me and my wife tried to have babies. We lost 2 or 3 during the pregnancy. And I came home from work one day and we were laying in bed that evening, and my wife said, "Honey, I made a deal." And I asked her, "What kind of deal did you make?" And she said, "God's going to give me children. He's going to let us have kids, but I'll never see them graduate. I'll never get to watch them grow up completely." And I didn't really think a whole lot about it until in 2010, my wife died at 39 of cancer. A cancer that people, it was small cell carcinoma, something that 39-year-olds don't normally get. But she was absolutely right. We had 2 kids, and she did not get to watch them grow up.
I'm very sorry about that.
Yeah, I always kind of wonder, you know, I never asked a whole lot about it because, you know, we had the kids, everything was fine, you know, but I wonder now, should I have asked how did this deal come about? Who? And, I mean, was it a dream? Were you know, so it always kind of made me wonder about that as well. If she didn't make a deal with not God, but someone else. Because it was odd. I mean, after she said that, I mean, it wasn't maybe 6 months later she was pregnant, and we had we had our daughter. I always wondered about that, but you know, it's just weird. And I can still see that dream in my head where I'm looking up through that hallway ceiling, and it's just abyss. It's just black abyss. But yeah, it was definitely an experience of a lifetime. You know what? You asked me about earlier paranormal things, and I did forget to mention one thing. We made a trip with a girl, or I was dating a girl when I was a teenager, and we made a trip to Hobbs, New Mexico, to visit her grandmother. I forgot all about this, but we went to visit her grandmother, and you know, she had a nice little house in Hobbs. Of course, you know, I don't know if you've ever been there during thunderstorms and things, but the clouds roll over the tops of the houses and they glow on and off, and they make a whirring noise. And she said it was because of white sands, radiation and stuff, I guess. But we all laid down to go to bed that night, and her and her husband, before he passed, had 2 separate beds. They were the Lucy Desi, I guess. But I was the first man to sleep in her husband's bed since he passed. And I woke up in the middle of the night paralyzed. And I saw something coming at me. And when it got closer, it was an old man. And he was wearing red and white striped pajamas. And this is really all I remember of that part of the night, is he came and he sat down on me and laid down. And then the next day, apparently I got up. We had sat out on the back porch, and I talked to my girlfriend for several hours, and none of this stuff I remember. But she said I called her Princess. And that's what her grandfather called her. And she said I didn't seem like myself. And then when I got, and I guess I went back to bed after that, woke up the next day, and that's when they were telling me about the conversations and things like that. Well, then her grandmother pulled out the pajamas, the red and white pajamas. I'm sorry, I forgot all about them.
Oh, no worries. When you saw those pajamas, how did you react?
My blood ran cold. My hair stood up. It kind of really blew me away, because I realized that with what they were telling me and those pajamas I'd been possessed. I'd been controlled. He took me, because when I woke up and saw him, I could not move. I remember trying to tap my hand on the bed, trying to make noise, and that's about all I could do. And then he sat right down on me and laid down. And like I said, they told me the rest of the stuff the next day. But it was just really weird. And then me calling her princess, I never called her princess. Babe, sweetheart, all that. I never called her princess, but she said that's what her grandfather used to call her before he passed.
And about what age were you when this happened?
17, about 17 years old. And that was in Hobbs, New Mexico. And we always wanted to go back through there, because we went to her. She had another aunt that lived in Aspermont, Texas. And she had a hotel there that is haunted. And we always wanted to go spend the night there, and we never got a chance to. But the thing in Hobbs, that kind of stuck with me. I can't believe I didn't remember it until just now. Life kind of drowns everything out after a while. I think that everything we encountered was very real. Me and the wife both experienced it at the same times, heard the same things, saw the same things. It's real. Anybody that questions it, I feel bad for them, because they've closed off part of their mind.
Yeah, for some, it's just like, unless it happens to them, and they just don't believe. They just refuse to. But I totally hear what you're saying. And Bryan, I appreciate you coming on and telling about what you experienced in that house.
I'm glad you invited me on. I enjoy talking about the stuff. It's been a lot of years.
Thank you so much again. You take care. We'll be talking soon.
You bet. Have a great day.
Thank you for listening. I appreciate you being here. If you have an account to share and would like to be on the show, email me at show@accountsoftheparanormal.com and tell me what you saw. You can catch this show wherever you listen to podcasts, as well as our website, accountsoftheparanormal.com, where you can access full episodes and links to all our socials and our YouTube channel, where you can listen and watch along with visual images. And if you're a fan of what you heard here, please like, share, follow, subscribe. I appreciate the support. I'll see you next time.